The fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway buzzed overhead as Maya pulled off her blue scrubs and stuffed them into her locker. Her feet ached something fierce after 12 straight hours of running between patient rooms, and all she wanted was to get home to her tiny apartment and collapse into bed. She grabbed her phone to check the time and saw 3 missed calls from her landlord. Her stomach dropped. She knew exactly what those calls were about, and it wasn't good news. The rent was already 2 weeks late, and Mr. Peterson wasn't known for his patience. Maya pressed play on the voicemail as she walked toward the subway entrance. Peterson's gravelly voice filled her ear through the earbuds. "Maya, this is your landlord calling again. Look, I've been more than fair here, but I need that rent money by Friday, or we're going to have to discuss other arrangements. Call me back." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Other arrangements? That was landlord speak for eviction. Maya did the math in her head as she descended the subway stairs. Even with her next paycheck, she'd still be short. Her student loan payments had gone up again last month, and the cost of everything seemed to be climbing faster than her salary. The subway station was quieter than usual for a weeknight. Most people were already home, probably eating dinner with their families or watching TV on their couches. Maya envied them. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a normal evening that didn't involve either working late or picking up an extra shift somewhere. She walked toward what she thought was the uptown platform, her mind still spinning with worry about the rent situation. Maybe she could pick up some weekend shifts at the clinic downtown. Dr. Rodriguez had mentioned they needed help with their Saturday hours. It would mean giving up her only day off, but what choice did she have? Maya was so lost in thought that she barely noticed which platform she'd chosen. The train arrived within a few minutes, which seemed lucky. Usually she had to wait forever for the uptown train. She stepped inside and found a seat near the back, grateful to finally sit down and rest her tired legs. The train car was mostly empty. A few people scattered throughout, all absorbed in their phones or nodding off after long days at work. Maya pulled out her own phone and started scrolling through her banking app, trying to figure out if there was any way to make the numbers work. Her checking account showed a depressing total of $437. Rent was $800. Her student loan payment was due in 5 days for $215. Groceries, utilities, subway card. The math just didn't add up, no matter how many times she ran the numbers. She thought about calling her mom back in Ohio, but quickly dismissed the idea. Her parents were already struggling to help her younger brother with his college expenses. They'd offered to help before, but Maya knew they couldn't afford it. She was supposed to be the success story, the first person in her family to finish college. Asking for money now felt like admitting she'd failed. The train pulled into a station and Maya glanced up from her phone. The sign outside said something about downtown financial district. That couldn't be right. She was supposed to be heading uptown to Washington Heights. Maya looked around the train car, confusion spreading across her face. A businessman in a wrinkled suit sat across from her, and she cleared her throat to get his attention. "Excuse me, is this the uptown train?" He looked up from his newspaper and shook his head. "No, this is downtown. You want the other platform for uptown." Maya's heart sank, of course. She'd been so distracted by her money worries that she'd gotten on the wrong train. Now she'd have to get off, cross over to the other platform, and wait for another train. It would add at least 30 minutes to her commute home, and she was already exhausted. The train slowed as it approached the next station. Maya gathered her purse and stood up, her legs protesting after sitting down for just a few minutes. Through the windows, she could see the platform was dimly lit and mostly empty. Not exactly the safest place to be hanging around alone at nearly midnight, but she didn't have much choice. The doors opened with a mechanical hiss, and Maya stepped out onto the concrete platform. The air was cooler down here, and she could hear the distant rumble of trains on other lines echoing through the tunnels. A few other passengers had gotten off with her, but they quickly disappeared up the stairs or down other corridors. Maya looked around for signs pointing to the uptown platform. The lighting was poor, with half the bulbs either burned out or flickering. She could make out directional signs, but they were old and faded. This wasn't one of the newer, renovated stations. The tiles on the walls were cracked and stained, and there was that musty smell that old subway stations always seemed to have. She started walking toward what looked like it might be the right direction, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. The platform seemed to stretch on forever, and her footsteps echoed off the walls. Maya couldn't wait to get home, take a hot shower, and try to forget about her money problems for a few hours. As she walked, she passed a few other people waiting for trains. A woman in business clothes tapped impatiently on her phone. An older man dozed on one of the metal benches, probably waiting for the late-night train home from his job. Everyone looked tired, just trying to get through another day. Maya found the signs pointing to the uptown platform and followed them down a long corridor. Her phone buzzed with another text message, probably Peterson again. She decided to ignore it for now. Whatever he had to say could wait until tomorrow. The corridor seemed longer than it should be, and Maya started to wonder if she was going the right way. But she kept walking, hoping to see signs for the uptown train soon. Her feet were getting more sore with each step, and she was already dreading the wait for the next train. Finally, she saw light ahead and the familiar tile work of another platform. Maya quickened her pace, eager to catch the next train home and put this long day behind her. Little did she know that her wrong turn, this frustrating detour, was about to change everything. As she emerged onto the new platform, Maya had no idea that in just a few minutes, her decision to help someone in need would set in motion a series of events that would transform her life in ways she never could have imagined. Maya stepped onto the uptown platform and immediately noticed how much quieter it was than the downtown side. Only a handful of people were scattered along the length of the platform, most of them keeping to themselves and checking their phones for train arrival times. She walked toward the middle of the platform, where a digital sign showed the next train would arrive in 8 minutes. 8 more minutes of standing on her already aching feet. Maya leaned against one of the support pillars and closed her eyes for a moment, trying to push away the stress about her rent situation. When she opened her eyes, she noticed a man about 50 feet away, closer to the edge of the platform. He was wearing a thick winter coat that had seen better days, dark pants that were too big for him, and what looked like a surgical mask covering most of his face. Nothing too unusual for the city, especially after the past few years when masks had become common everywhere. But something about the way he was moving caught her attention. He seemed unsteady on his feet, swaying slightly as he stood near the yellow safety line. Maya had seen enough people in distress during her years as a nurse to recognize when something wasn't right. The man took a step closer to the edge of the platform, and Maya felt her stomach tighten with worry. She looked around to see if anyone else was noticing, but the other passengers were all absorbed in their own worlds. A young woman nearby was scrolling through social media with earbuds in. An older businessman was reading something on his tablet. Maya decided to keep watching. Maybe the man was just tired, like everyone else trying to get home after a long day. But as she observed him, she noticed he kept reaching up to touch his head, like something was bothering him. The rumble of an approaching train echoed through the tunnel, but it was coming from the opposite direction. Maya checked the digital sign again. Still 5 minutes until her train arrived. The man in the worn coat seemed to hear the approaching train too, because he turned toward the sound and took another step closer to the edge. That's when Maya saw him stumble. It happened so fast that her brain almost didn't process it at first. One moment he was standing upright, and the next he was falling backward away from the tracks, thankfully, but his head was heading straight for the concrete platform. The sound of his skull hitting the ground was something Maya would never forget. A sharp crack that seemed to echo off the tunnel walls, followed by complete silence except for the distant rumble of the train on the other track. Maya didn't think. Her nursing training kicked in, and she was running toward the man before she even realized she'd moved. As she got closer, she could see blood starting to pool beneath his head, dark red against the dirty concrete. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" Maya dropped to her knees beside him, her hands automatically going to check his pulse. It was there, steady but a little fast. The man's eyes were open but unfocused, and he was trying to say something through the mask. Maya looked around for help, expecting to see other people rushing over. Instead, she saw something that made her stomach turn. The woman with the earbuds had pulled out her phone and was recording everything. The businessman had looked up from his tablet, saw what was happening, and deliberately turned away. A couple of teenagers who had been sitting on a bench were also filming, one of them actually laughing and saying something about how this would get so many views online. "Someone call 911. Maya shouted, but no one moved. They just kept recording or looking away like this was either entertainment or someone else's problem. Maya felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down and focused on her patient. She pulled out her own phone and dialed 911, while keeping her other hand on the man's wrist to monitor his pulse. 1. What's your emergency? I'm on the subway platform at... Maya looked around frantically for a station sign. Chambers Street Station. A man has fallen and hit his head. He's conscious but disoriented, and there's significant bleeding from a head wound. While she gave the dispatcher information, Maya gently moved the man's head to get a better look at the injury. The cut was deep, probably going to need stitches, and there was already swelling around the area. Head injuries were always serious, especially when someone lost consciousness, even briefly. Sir, what's your name? Maya asked, leaning down closer to hear his response. David, he mumbled through the mask, his voice weak and confused. I think I'm okay. You hit your head pretty hard, David. I'm a nurse, and I'm going to stay with you until the paramedics get here, okay? David tried to sit up, but Maya gently pressed him back down. No, don't move yet. You might have a concussion, and we need to keep you still until we know more. She took off her jacket and folded it up to place under his head, trying to make him more comfortable, while also applying gentle pressure to slow the bleeding. As she worked, she became aware that more people were gathering around, but not to help. They were taking pictures and videos, treating this man's medical emergency like some kind of entertainment. Could you please put your phones away and give him some space? Maya said firmly to the crowd. This man needs medical attention, not an audience. Most of them ignored her, but a few people did step back. Maya turned her attention back to David, who was trying to focus his eyes on her face. Where am I? He asked, his voice still shaky. You're on the subway platform. You fell and hit your head. Do you remember what happened? David was quiet for a moment, like he was trying to piece together his memories. I was waiting for the train. I felt dizzy, and then he touched his head gingerly. Everything went black. Maya noticed something that struck her as odd. When David had reached up to touch his head, his sleeve had pulled back slightly, revealing what looked like an expensive watch. It seemed out of place with his worn clothing and general appearance. But head injuries could be confusing enough without her trying to solve mysteries about jewelry. The paramedics are on their way, Maya told him. Just try to stay calm and don't move around too much. In the distance, she could hear sirens approaching. Maya felt relieved that professional help was coming, but also angry that she was the only person who had bothered to help. Everyone else had either walked away or turned this man's crisis into social media content. David's eyes were becoming more focused, which was a good sign. You didn't have to help me, he said quietly. Most people wouldn't have. Maya looked at him with surprise. Of course I had to help you. You were hurt, but you don't even know me. That doesn't matter, Maya said simply. Everyone deserves help when they need it. As the sirens got louder, Maya realized that her wrong turn tonight had led her to exactly where she needed to be. She didn't know anything about this man named David, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't have lived with herself if she had walked away. The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and radio chatter. Maya had insisted on coming along when the paramedics couldn't find any identification on David. Someone needed to stay with him, and she wasn't about to abandon him now. David drifted in and out of consciousness during the short trip. When he was awake, he seemed confused about where he was and kept asking the same questions over and over. The paramedics told Maya this was normal with head injuries, but it still worried her. At the emergency room, Maya helped transfer David's information to the medical team. She explained what she had witnessed and her initial assessment of his condition. Dr. Williams, the attending physician, looked surprised when he learned Maya was a nurse. You don't work here, do you? I don't recognize you. No, I work at St. Mary's uptown. I was just on my way home when this happened. Dr. Williams nodded with respect. Well, you probably saved this man's life. Head injuries can be tricky, and you did everything right. Maya felt a small sense of satisfaction, but she was more concerned about David's condition. Will he be okay? We need to run some tests first. CT scan, blood work, the usual. With head injuries, we always have to be careful about internal bleeding or swelling. Maya watched as they wheeled David away for his CT scan. She realized she should probably go home now. She'd done her part, and David was in good hands. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the way he'd said that most people wouldn't have helped him, or maybe it was the fact that he seemed to have no one else looking out for him. She found a chair in the waiting area and decided to stay a little longer, just until the test results came back. An hour later, Dr. Williams found her still sitting there, scrolling through her phone to stay awake. "You're still here?" he asked. I wanted to make sure he was okay. "Any news?" "Good news, actually. No internal bleeding, no brain swelling. He has a concussion and needed 12 stitches, but he should make a full recovery. We're keeping him overnight for observation, which is standard procedure." Maya felt relief wash over her. "Can I see him?" Dr. Williams looked puzzled.
"Are you family?"
"I thought you said you didn't know him." "I don't, but—" Maya struggled to explain why she felt responsible for this stranger. "He doesn't seem to have anyone else. I just want to make sure he's not alone." The doctor's expression softened. "Room 314, visiting hours are over, but I'll make an exception." Maya found David's room on the 3rd floor. He was awake, staring at the ceiling, his head wrapped in clean white bandages. Someone had helped him remove the mask he'd been wearing, and she could see his full face for the first time. He looked younger than she'd expected, maybe in his 30s, with kind eyes and a face that showed he'd been through some difficult times recently. "Hey," Maya said softly from the doorway. "How are you feeling?" David turned toward her voice, and his face lit up with recognition. "You're the nurse from the subway. I was hoping I'd get to thank you properly." Maya walked into the room and sat in the visitor's chair next to his bed. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're okay. The doctor told me you stayed here all this time. Why would you do that? You don't even know me." It was the second time he'd asked her that question, and Maya still didn't have a good answer. "I guess I wanted to make sure you were going to be all right. Do you have family we should call? Friends?" David was quiet for a long moment. "No, there's no one to call." Something in his voice made Maya's heart ache. Everyone had someone, didn't they? "What about work? Won't people be expecting you?" "I'm between jobs right now," David said, which Maya assumed was a polite way of saying he was unemployed. It would explain the worn clothes and the general appearance of someone who'd been struggling. "Well, you don't have to worry about anything tonight. Just focus on getting better." David studied her face carefully. "Can I ask you something?" Back on the platform, when everyone else was walking away or taking pictures, you ran toward me instead. "Weren't you scared?" Maya thought about it. "I was more worried than scared. In my job, when someone's hurt, you don't really think about anything else. You just help, even when it's a stranger. Even when that stranger looks like—" He gestured to his rumpled clothes. "Looks like what?" "Like someone people usually cross the street to avoid." Maya felt a flash of anger, not at David, but at a world that would make him think that way. "What you look like doesn't matter. You're a person who needed help." David's eyes got watery and he quickly looked away. "I haven't met many people like you." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she changed the subject. "Are you hungry? The hospital food here isn't great, but I could get you something from the cafeteria." "You don't have to do that. I want to. Besides, I haven't eaten either, and I'm starving." Maya returned 20 minutes later with 2 sandwiches, chips, and coffee. She'd also stopped by the gift shop and picked up some basic toiletries she thought David might need. "You really didn't have to do all this," David said as Maya set the items on his bedside table. "It's no big deal. I know what it's like to be stuck in the hospital with nothing." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. David seemed more alert now, though Maya could tell his head was still bothering him. Finally, he spoke up. "Can I ask what you were doing on that platform so late? Don't most nurses work day shifts?" Maya laughed. "I wish. I work all kinds of shifts. Tonight was a double because we were short-staffed. I was on my way home when I took the wrong train." "Wrong train?" "Yeah, I was so tired and distracted that I got on the downtown train instead of uptown. If I hadn't made that mistake, I never would have been on that platform." David looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "So you being there to help me was just luck? I guess so. Or maybe it was meant to happen. Do you believe in that? Things being meant to happen?" Maya considered the question. "Sometimes. I mean, what are the odds? I take the wrong train, end up on a platform I've never been to before, and happen to be there right when you needed help? It seems like more than just coincidence." David nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right." A nurse came in to check David's vital signs and give him some pain medication. Maya realized how late it was getting and knew she should probably head home. She had to work again in the morning. "I should let you get some rest," she said, standing up to leave. "Maya," David said, and she was surprised he remembered her name. "Thank you. For everything. I mean it. Get some sleep, David." I'll check on you tomorrow if I can. As Maya walked to the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to David's story than he was telling her. But whatever secrets he was keeping, she was glad she'd been there when he needed someone. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time was all it took to make a difference in someone's life. She had no idea that David was thinking the exact same thing about her. Maya kept her promise and returned to the hospital the next evening after her shift. She'd been thinking about David all day, wondering how he was doing and whether anyone had come to visit him. Part of her hoped his family had shown up, but another part of her was worried he was still alone. She stopped by the gift shop again and picked up a few magazines and a small plant. She figured even if he was being discharged soon, having something to read might help pass the time. When she reached room 314, she found David sitting up in bed looking much more alert than the night before. The color had returned to his face and his eyes were clear and focused. He smiled when he saw her in the doorway. "You came back," he said, and Maya could hear genuine surprise in his voice. "I told you I would. How are you feeling?" "Much better. The headache is almost gone and the doctor says I can probably go home tomorrow." Maya sat down in the same chair she'd occupied the night before and handed him the magazines and plant. "I thought you might be getting bored in here." David looked at the small succulent plant with an expression that seemed way too emotional for such a simple gift. "Thank you. I can't remember the last time someone brought me flowers." "Well, a plant, but you know what I mean. Everyone deserves to have something nice to look at when they're stuck in the hospital." David was quiet for a moment, staring at the little plant. When he looked back up at Maya, there was something different in his eyes. Like he was trying to make a difficult decision. "Maya, can I tell you something? Something I probably should have said yesterday?" "Of course," David took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am." Maya felt her stomach tighten. Was he about to tell her he was dangerous? That he was running from the law? Her imagination started racing through possibilities. "My name really is David, but I'm not exactly who you think I am. When you found me on that platform, I was living on the streets, wearing those old clothes, pretending to be homeless." "Pretending?" Maya was confused. Why would someone pretend to be homeless? "Because I wanted to understand what it was really like. I wanted to see how people treat someone when they think that person has nothing to offer them." Maya still didn't understand. "I don't get it. Why would you want to do that?" David ran his hand through his hair, wincing slightly when he touched the bandaged area. "This is going to sound crazy, but I have money. A lot of money. My company went public 2 years ago and I became what people call a billionaire." Maya stared at him. "A billionaire? I know how it sounds. But after I got all that money, I started noticing how differently people treated me. Everyone wanted something from me. Business deals, charity donations, investments in their ideas. I couldn't tell who actually cared about me as a person and who just saw dollar signs." Maya's mind was reeling. "So you decided to pretend to be homeless to see how people would treat you when they thought you had nothing?" "Exactly. I've been doing it for 3 months now. Sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, spending time on the streets. And Maya, what I learned was heartbreaking." David's voice got heavy with emotion. "In 3 months, you were the first person to show me genuine kindness without expecting anything in return. Everyone else either ignored me completely or treated me like I was invisible. Some people were actually cruel, like those kids on the platform who thought my accident was funny." Maya felt overwhelmed trying to process this information. "You're telling me you're actually rich? Like really rich?" "I founded a tech company called Connect Life. It's an app that helps people find community services and resources. Maybe you've heard of it?" Maya had heard of it. Everyone had. Connect Life was one of the biggest apps in the world. "You're David Chen? You know the name? Are you kidding? Your app helped my neighbor find free legal aid when she was getting evicted, and my coworker used it to find mental health resources when she couldn't afford therapy." Maya shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe this." David looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry I lied to you. But Maya, you have to understand, your kindness reminded me why I started that company in the first place. I wanted to help people, to make the world a little bit better. But somewhere along the way I lost sight of that. So what happens now? You go back to your billionaire life?" "I don't know. This whole experience has changed me. Especially meeting you." David looked directly at Maya. "You saved my life, not just medically, but in every way that matters. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. Maya stood up and walked to the window, trying to process everything David had told her. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm glad you're not actually homeless and struggling, but this is all so hard to believe. I know it is, and I know you probably think I'm crazy for doing this experiment. Maya turned back to face him. Actually, I think it's brave and sad. The fact that you had to pretend to be poor to find out who would treat you with basic human decency says a lot about the world we live in. You're not angry that I lied to you? Maya thought about it.
No, I'm not angry.
You were trying to learn something important, and honestly, it doesn't change anything about why I helped you. I didn't help you because I thought you were poor, and I wouldn't have walked away if I'd known you were rich. I helped you because you were a person who needed help. David's eyes filled with tears. Do you realize how rare that is? In 3 months of testing people, you're the only one who passed. That's not a test I was trying to pass, David. That's just being human. But that's exactly my point. Being human shouldn't be so uncommon. Maya sat back down, still trying to wrap her head around the situation. So what's your plan now? Are you going to keep living on the streets? No. I think I've learned what I needed to learn. It's time to go back to my real life, but I want to do it differently this time. I want to remember what you taught me. What did I teach you? That kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything. That treating people with dignity isn't about what they can do for you. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is just show up for someone when they need it most. Maya felt tears forming in her own eyes. You would have figured that out on your own eventually. Maybe. But you showed me something I'd forgotten how to see. You showed me hope. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both processing the weight of what had been shared. Finally, David spoke again. Maya, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know that this has nothing to do with feeling guilty or owing you anything. This is about recognizing something special when I see it. What do you want to ask? I'm starting a new foundation, focused on healthcare access for people who can't afford it. I need someone to run it, someone who understands what it's like to struggle, but who also has the heart to really make a difference. Would you consider being part of that? Maya felt her heart skip a beat. This was the kind of opportunity she'd only dreamed about, but it also felt too good to be true. David, that's incredibly generous, but I don't want you to feel like you have to. I don't feel like I have to do anything. I want to do this. You changed my life, Maya. Let me try to change yours. Maya stared at David for a long moment, trying to process what he'd just offered her. Running a healthcare foundation? It was the kind of opportunity she'd never even dared to dream about. But something about it felt overwhelming, almost too good to be real. David, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't accept, so. Anything like that? It's too much. Why is it too much? Maya struggled to find the right words. Because I didn't help you expecting anything in return. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Taking a job from you now would make it feel like I had some kind of hidden agenda. David leaned forward in his hospital bed. Maya, can I tell you what I've learned in the business world? The people who don't want things handed to them are exactly the people who deserve opportunities. You're not asking me for anything. I'm offering because I recognize something special when I see it. But I don't know anything about running a foundation. I'm just a nurse. Just a nurse? David's voice rose slightly. Maya, you saved my life with your medical knowledge. You stayed with a complete stranger because you have compassion. You brought me food and a plant because you understand that small kindnesses matter. Those aren't small things. That's exactly what this foundation needs. Maya looked out the window again, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. I need to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. 3 weeks later, Maya was back at her regular routine at St. Mary's Hospital, but she couldn't stop thinking about David's offer. They'd exchanged phone numbers, and he'd been texting her occasionally, just checking in and never pressuring her about the foundation job. Maya hadn't told anyone about David's real identity. It felt like a secret too big and too unbelievable to share. Who would believe that she'd randomly helped a billionaire on the subway? She was on her lunch break, eating a sad sandwich in the hospital cafeteria, when her phone rang. It was her landlord. Maya, I'm really sorry to do this, but I need an answer about the rent. I've been patient, but I have bills too. Maya's stomach dropped. She'd managed to scrape together most of the money she owed, but she was still short. Mr. Peterson, can you give me just a few more days? I'm waiting on some overtime pay to come through. I'm sorry, but I really can't wait any longer. If you can't pay by Friday, I'm going to have to start the eviction process. Maya hung up the phone and put her head in her hands. She'd been working double shifts whenever possible, but it wasn't enough. The cost of living in the city kept going up faster than her paychecks. Her phone buzzed with a text message from David. "Hope you're having a good day. No pressure about the foundation, but the offer stands whenever you're ready." Maya stared at the message for a long time. Maybe it was time to swallow her pride. That evening, Maya called David. "Hey, it's Maya. Are you busy?" "Never too busy for you." "What's up?" "I was wondering if we could meet and talk more about the foundation. I think I might be ready to hear the details." They met at a quiet coffee shop near the hospital the next evening. David looked completely different from the man Maya had met on the subway platform. He was wearing a nice suit, his hair was styled, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. But when he smiled at her, she could still see the same kind eyes from the hospital room. "I'm glad you called," David said as they sat down with their coffee. "I was hoping you'd change your mind. I want to hear more about what you have in mind, but I need to be honest with you about something first." "What's that?" Maya took a deep breath. "I'm about to be evicted. My rent is past due and I can't keep up with all my bills. I don't want you to think that's why I'm suddenly interested in your offer, but I also don't want to lie to you." David's expression grew serious. "Maya, how much do you owe?" "It doesn't matter. I don't want your money. If I take this job, I want it to be because I'm qualified, not because I need help. What if I told you that your financial struggles are exactly part of why you're qualified?" Maya looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" "The foundation I want to create is about helping people who can't afford health care. Who better to run it than someone who understands what it's like to struggle with money? Someone who knows what it feels like to choose between paying rent and paying for medicine?" Maya had never thought about it that way. "I guess that makes sense. Maya, I've been rich for 2 years now and I've almost forgotten what it was like before. But you're living it every day. You know what people need because you need those same things." David pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "Let me show you what I'm thinking." For the next hour, David explained his vision for the foundation. It would provide grants for medical expenses, fund free clinics in underserved areas, and help train healthcare workers who wanted to work with low-income patients. The salary he was offering Maya was more than triple what she made as a nurse. "This sounds amazing, David. But are you sure you want me to run it? There have to be people with more experience." "Experience doing what? Being kind to strangers? Caring about people who can't help you in return?" "Maya, I've met plenty of people with impressive resumes, but I've never met anyone with a better heart than yours." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "I can't believe this is happening. Will you do it?" Maya thought about all the patients she'd treated who couldn't afford their medications. All the people she'd seen in the emergency room who only came when things got desperate because they couldn't afford regular doctor visits. All the times she'd wished she could do more to help. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, I'll do it." David's face lit up with joy. "Maya, you have no idea how happy this makes me. But I have one condition. Name it. I want to keep working as a nurse 1 day a week. I don't want to lose touch with what it's like to be hands-on with patients." "Done. Actually, I think that's a brilliant idea." 6 months later, Maya was sitting in her new office, reviewing grant applications from families who needed help paying for medical treatments. The Maya Rodriguez Foundation for Healthcare Access had approved over 200 grants in its first 6 months, and they were just getting started. Maya still couldn't quite believe how much her life had changed. She'd moved into a beautiful apartment, paid off her student loans, and was doing work that felt meaningful every single day. But the best part was the letter she'd received that morning from a single mother whose daughter's surgery had been funded by one of their grants. "Thank you for giving us hope when we thought we were out of options. Your foundation saved my daughter's life." Maya picked up the small, succulent plant David had kept from the hospital. It had grown significantly and now sat on her office windowsill, a daily reminder of how one moment of kindness could change everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Saw the news article about the foundation. So proud of you. Coffee later to celebrate?" Maya smiled as she typed back. "Absolutely. And David, thank you for reminding me that helping people isn't just what I do. It's who I am. Sometimes the wrong train takes you exactly where you need to go,